Hello and welcome to this special extra lesson about SIS 275 Introduction to Software Engineering. I am your professor, Dr. Bart, and I am going to be talking to you today about making a website or web application, I should really say, using TypeScript and React. And my plan for this is to go in a little bit blind almost. I'm going to not have anything really planned besides the high level overview of the application that I've shown off to the class before. And I know I've already written some code in class, but I thought it'd be good to go from the start. All I've done is create React app TypeScript, template TypeScript, and started the default application up. I haven't modified my package JSON. I haven't modified any of my my code in my app.tsx file. I've basically done nothing to prep for it besides make this little diagram. So in this diagram, it's showing off the application I want to make. This is going to be a game that I play with my TAs. So my TAs have to go through some amount of training, and to do so, we have this teaching practices game. I have these cards that have scenarios on them with different things that might happen when you are teaching, and it's supposed to be someone reads it out, and then everyone else gets a chance to offer what they would do in that scenario, and then finally they read out the suggested answer, and we kind of discuss. It's a pretty simplistic game. It's arguably not even a game necessarily, but certainly a good training experience. And in person, there are physical cards, and I want my students, my TAs, to get to actually do this online. We've been doing this remote. And for that reason, I have this web interface I've got planned, this little web application where we won't immediately reveal the suggested answer, and we can swap the prompts out between the other options because there's a lot of them. And we'll also have the listed turn order for all the TAs. So we'll come back to this data. This is going to be a very important part of our application for sure. But for now, I want to focus on just the web interface that I'm planning, and it's very simplistic, right? It doesn't look very fancy. It's like a wireframe, just paper and pencil. Literally, this is a photo I took of something I did on paper and pencil prior to this. And you see the important components are kind of given attention. Like there's this button that lets you spin for a new answer. There is a space for a prompt that is shown. There's a button to reveal the reference answer, so the suggested answer as they call it, that we have over here. There's also this list of turn order, and it has to be editable and shuffleable, and there's some sense here of being able to advance it. And I'm not entirely sure this is how the layout's going to be. Maybe I end up moving the advanced buttons up here, but this is my first cut at it. And I have a few other notes of requirements, functional requirements that we have. We have to be able to save to local storage before we're done, so we're going to need to be able to persist. And stretch goal would be like they want to be able to add new prompts and refs on the fly. And we can imagine a lot of other features, but this is sort of what we consider our MVP. And I'm going to sit down and I'm going to code out this solution. I'm going to see how well I can do, just without any real prep or any real practice or anything, just having made some web applications before. So any errors or anything you see, they're going to be very legitimate. They're going to be very honest. You see that I've broken this down into components, and that's sort of one model. It's sort of how React wants us to think about things as building up components. We'll also have our data model. And that's a very important part of any application is the interfaces and the data that we're manipulating. And it's sometimes a good starting point. So if I go into my my default application that I've generated here, let's walk through it, and then we'll start talking a little bit about some of the components we'll make and some of the data model that we'll have. But first, I started up my web server already by running the start command. From my package JSON. You see if you right click it, I can run script, and that's what we're seeing down here in the terminal. Everything went well, compiled successfully. It's no warnings, no problems currently in the workspace. It launched the index.tsx file into my browser, and we don't need to worry about editing this guy. This is as it should be. its main business is to create my app component and get that rendered into the document. There is a public folder here with my index.html. This is the actual real file that they use as a template, and they'll inject the stuff that I need. So you see down here, there's the ID root on the div tag. They build up my application in index.tsx, and they take the generated code and they attach it onto that root node. So if I ever need to, I can come back here and I can add some stuff to my index.html. That will be relevant much later. But for now, I want to focus on this app component, right? So React is built around the idea of functional components. And indeed, we have this functional component called app as our starting point. And it has a whole bunch of stuff inside of it that we're really just going to get rid of. Like, we really don't need any of this kind of stuff that they give us. It's nice, it's fine, but it's not really necessary for our purposes. Let me also launch the developer console over here, just so that I have access to the console where error messages and extra information, such as, like, right now I've got a warning that I defined a variable but never used it, and my TypeScript linter is helpfully pointing that out to me. I can also get access to my components. I only have the app component so far, because this is the React developer tools that I have installed. You'll have to install this separately, but it's free, it's easy to use. It lets me get access to information about my components. Back over here, I mentioned there's this warning. I deleted some code. I didn't delete this import statement, right? This was importing a image file. Better get rid of that so it's not clogging up down here. And now it's happy. If I reload the page, you see it's no longer worrying about that particular warning. We've got no contents, of course. And one of the other behaviors I want to model, by the way, is making good commits. Clearing out just what's in there isn't really necessarily a good amount of starting work. If I had a bunch of other clearing out, maybe. But I want to start focusing on making this my top level component and everything when I get into it. Because it's really important that we start orienting around this idea of functional components. And technically speaking, all it needs is it needs to just be a function that returns some JSX. JSX is HTML that's slightly modified. It's this JavaScript extended syntax that lets us embed the HTML directly in the JavaScript. And it has slightly different syntax. So in HTML, you would write class in order to add CSS classes, but in JSX, you have to use className. But you're also allowed to embed code expressions in there. So we'll be able to see that pretty soon. I mentioned that this is a functional component. It's a function that returns a JSX code. We're also using TypeScript, right? So I made this a TSX file. When I created it, I told it to use the TypeScript template. And that means I can actually annotate this with a return type. And that's really what you should do, right? And technically speaking, TypeScript is very flexible. You can turn off everything and just make it JavaScript. But there's a lot of settings that let you make it stricter about things. And one of the ones that we could technically turn off is like the ability to, that we could turn on is like force it to always have a return type, like return types be required. TypeScript require return type. And there's a bunch of other ones too that we could try and do that are very useful. For instance, we might end up turning on no implicit any and prevent the any type, because those are terrifying. But we'll come back before we are done to our TypeScript file. I've talked a little bit here about the functional component returning JSX. We'll see a lot of examples of that, of how we can generate HTML files. But for now, I just want to put some text in there saying hello world, just so we see it working. And you see the text hello world is now on my web page. I'll zoom in a little bit just so we can see it. And we have our component. It has no state, right? This is a stateless. There's no data or memory associated with our component, which makes it pretty lame. We can't really do anything with that. we know that as programmers, the data model is one of the most important things about the code, right? Control flow, things like functions, things like if statements, for loops, they don't matter, not really, compared to the importance of the data, the model. All of computer programming is really all about data transformation. And we use control structures like if statements, like functions, to manipulate the data, but the data is always the starting point. So we know at least one bit of this program is going to be this data that we have about all of these cards. And I've turned all the data around. I've done a little bit of spreadsheet manipulation to end up with the data reformatted in this way, because there's actually like 3 different kinds of cards. Microaggression cards, round 1 teaching practices, round 2 teaching practices. They have the prompt and their answer. And then I wanted to make sure each card also had a unique ID. So I've gotten all this data, and now I'm going to use a website called CSV JSON. And I could do this next step in any number of ways. I'm doing it in this way because it's convenient in the moment, but I could be a lot more sophisticated. If I thought that I was going to get new cards all the time, I probably wouldn't do it this way. But if I'm only going to have this one CSV file, this static file, I'm just going to copy and paste the CSV content into this website. CSV is comma separated values, and I know it doesn't look like commas here, but it's tabular data. So I copied the tabular data into here, and I click convert, and it gives me a JSON representation of my data. Now, we've talked a little bit about JSON, but just as a refresher, JSON is a standard for data interchange. It's pretty cool stuff. It lets us use objects, the curly braces, arrays or lists. They're actually lists, but JavaScript calls them arrays because it's ridiculous. Our objects have keys. Our lists have any number of the same type of thing inside of them. So you could have a list of numbers, list of strings, list of objects. Objects have keys. Those keys have to be strings, but their values can be any type. So here ID is a number, and kind is a string. And there's also prompt and answer. Prompt and answer are also both string values. So all of these objects end up looking the same. They're all the same structure. I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy it, and go back to my code. And right now I'm going to create a new folder called assets. It's a common name for what it's going to contain is just assets, data, images, music files if I had any of those. Maybe I want to add music to my game. And I'll make a new file called cards.json and just slap my JSON file in there. So right now I've got some data, which is pretty cool. And there's a lot of features in Visual Studio that lets me kind of easily browse through this. And you can see everything I got in there is all nicely formatted, ready to go. I can import cards from assets cards. And if I can get the URL right, it's .json. Yes. So now I have access to the data, and it's stored in cards. And because this is JSX, I could actually just echo out, I'm not even sure what it would look like, the data into my app. Apparently I can't. Yeah, objects are not valid. So if I use the toString function, right, because this is all just JavaScript, right? Like I'm doing a variable access and calling toString. Yeah, so definitely works, right? If I reload the page, I don't think there's going to be any errors, probably. Yep, no errors. But it's not really giving me what I want. It's just dumping a toString representation of my list of objects. And if you have an object in JavaScript, like let data equals name Dr. Bart, if I had that value in there, so data is an object, that's good, that part. But if I try to convert it to a string, it renders object. And I'll say it now is you will see that text object a lot. It will be a common experience for you to run into random objects. And you'll see that when you're converting a actual object to a string. Happens so easily in JavaScript, just all the time. TypeScript will make it much more difficult for you to make that kind of mistake. But you see, even now I managed to trigger it, even though we're doing this, because I rendered a list of objects and it just casts the object to a string representation, and that string representation is just the word object. Not very helpful. So what I actually wanted to do was take advantage of a built-in function called JSON.stringify, which knows how to take an arbitrary bit of JSON data and turn it into a string representation. So JSON.stringify built in, very handy. If I use this right, creates a string representation of all my data. Now that's obviously not what I actually want, but I wanted to be able to visualize that I had loaded the data, that it was in my program, that I could use it in any number of different ways. Now I've started working with data here, and it has a consistent structure. I want to define an interface that will let me work with this more effectively. So let me make a new interfaces folder, and inside of it I'm going to put card.ts, and note it's a TS file. This is not going to have any JSX expressions. It's just going to have TypeScript, pure TypeScript. If you have a pure TypeScript file, then you can't embed JSS in it, right? So if I tried to make a functional component called like card, and it returned a JSX element, and I tried to put some in there, then it would not like this. This would end up being a syntax error. It does not know how that works. Instead, this is just going to have a regular type description, and in particular, it's going to be a new interface called card, where a card, according to our data model, has ID, which is a number, kind, which is a string, prompt, which is a string, and answer, which is a string. And we're going to start using TypeScript here, so I actually might even go further and take advantage of the fact that in TypeScript we can have very nice enumerated types. We'll see if I end up regretting this, but it strikes me as the right idea looking at it. Is right now we've got microaggressions, round 1, round 2, and I think I actually want to do teaching easy and teaching hard. I don't know that it's strictly as simple as easy and hard. I should probably call it like teaching 1 and teaching 2. But I want to separate these and make them all easy, quick, simple things. You'll see why, I think, in a second. Teaching hard. Bear with me for now as I sound through. So as I said, I did not prep for this or anything. I have not done anything more than just sit down with that piece of paper and think about it for a second. Really, I've not thought about the code very much at all. So I'm taking this CSV data again, converting it once more. This time now the kind field is going to be slightly different. Oh, nope, nearly erased all that. So now teaching hard, teaching easy. And the reason I'm doing this is because now I want to also make export type card type. And I'm creating a new type. And you can actually assign here, I could do something like, make its type number or string. Now that doesn't seem very interesting, right? Like, okay, I could just say card type, and we all know card type is a string. I haven't really earned anything, but it does tell us something that like this is slightly more specific than if it's just a string, especially if instead of this we said it could only be one of set of specific strings. So I could say, oh, it has to be either teaching easy or teaching hard or microaggressions. I could go with any of these different string values, but if it ever doesn't have these 3 values, then something's gone wrong. Now, that's one way of rendering this type. Another really cool way of doing it is to make an enum. Enums are very snazzy. So here, I'm going to declare it teaching hard microaggressions. Let's see if I do this correctly. Is this how we make enums in TypeScript? Enum, TypeScript. I'm just going to quickly Google to make sure I know how to still do this, because it has been a little while. It looks like I have it correct. Oh, I'm ridiculous. I wrote export enum card type. Yes, the actual name is an important part of it, and that's why I was freaking out down here. So now I have access to card type, and I can actually look up these as fields. They're technically constants, like they're actually created as constants with a numeric value behind the scenes. I can override that value and make this teaching easy, teaching hard, or teaching prompt round 1 was the original text. Teaching prompt round 2 and microaggressions round. So now card types values, like I've got these little fields for it. It's like a constant object. It's got three keys that I could potentially use, and those keys map to their string representations. And we'll come back to why this is going to be useful. It will pay off down the road. But in the meantime, ignoring the code advantages I'll get, the conceptual advantage is it's helping constrain my code a little bit more. Types help us by simplifying, by constraining the domain, the problem domain. If we just say like, oh, it's a string, we don't know much about it. But now we know it's a card type. You know, anyone coming across is like, oh, cards have a card type, like their kind is a card type, and that's it's one of these 3 values. It helps narrow things down. I wrote the word type. Card kind seems like it would match better. Picking names, so important, so critical to the whole development process. Very difficult to do. Consistency is usually a good thing, and if I'm going to call it card kind over, kind over here, I shouldn't suddenly switch to card type over here. So I have the basics of a card now. That seems like it's an important idea in my application. And I might start thinking about rendering as a component an actual card. That might be part of it. It's not really represented in my original plan directly, but this kind of right-hand side is kind of like the card, and then over on the left is kind of the control panel. And I guess actually that kind of tells me my first couple components that I'm going to make. So if I go over to components, I can create a new one for our card, TSX, and control panel.tsx. So these are TSX files. They are going to have JSX expressions embedded. They're also capitalized. The convention here is when you have a component, a functional component file, a file that is going to contain a functional component, you capitalize it with the name of the component. That's usually one file per component. Very similar to what they do in Java, except we're capitalizing the file name. Compare that to the data file or the interface file. They weren't capitalized, even though they have things that are capitalized. The decision to do this is convention rather than any kind of hard rule. So if you didn't follow this convention, I don't think anyone would get upset. I'm thinking now, I'm looking at this name card. I'm going to have a component named card, and I don't think that's a good idea. I think we want to rename this to be card viewer, right? Separate the idea for the component of what it's going to end up doing from the data it's representing. So this goes back to an idea called like model and view. I have my model over here, and I want to separate that from the view of the model. Now, it's currently freaking out at me. It's like, dude, you don't really have anything inside the guts of your control panel or your card viewer, so maybe you want to put something in there. And we do. Export control panel. It will be a function control panel, takes in currently nothing, and returns a JSX element. For now, we got to stub something out, so we'll just say control panel over here. Over in card viewer, we'll do the same thing. Export function card viewer is a function that takes in nothing and returns JSX element, returning the div card viewer. Just real quick, I haven't mentioned it yet. Export, it's necessary here because I'm going to use this in other files. Like card viewer is going to be a useful thing. If you have a local function that you don't need outside of this module, outside of this file, then you don't have to put export in front of it. But we are going to use card viewer. It's going to be a new functional component. We can use it in app. And in fact, let me get rid of this cards dump and instead put in these new card control panel component and a card viewer component. So if we just quick fix, we can quickly import them. And now we have both. I do have a warning. Cards is defined but never used. I'll need to make sure I keep my eye on that. But if we go back to my website, then we'll see that we currently have this stuff in here. Now, this is probably a good time to go back to my plan and point out, I want to have 2-column layout. And if you try and do that by hand, it's not the worst in modern web development, but it could be a lot more convenient. I don't want to fuss with the layout. I don't want to have to worry about the fact that I suck at designing stuff. And for that purpose, we're going to use something called Bootstrap. Bootstrap is awesome. You have used Bootstrap websites. I have probably made you use Bootstrap. And I probably made a website that you have used that uses Bootstrap. It's got a slightly distinctive style, but it tends to do a great job at just being a baseline level of attractiveness. And it makes laying out your website much easier. They have this whole model of containers and grids that make it much easier to think about how to lay out content. In addition to having tons of form controls and components and stuff like alerts and breadcrumbs and buttons and all this good stuff. Now, we want to start using it, and we're actually going to end up using it through React. So let me say react-bootstrap. And we do that to go to their website, go there, get started, and they give us the snippet that we'll need to install. So we go back over here. I'm going to launch a new terminal. Over here for PowerShell and Windows, I use Windows. I'm in my TA trainer folder, and before I do this, and I should really just set an alarm for myself. We've done a little bit of work here. I think I actually should make a commit now that I'm thinking about it. Maybe at the very least, we commit first our cards. So notice how I'm staging only one file right now. Add in initial card data, check mark. And then we can add in the interfaces, card interface created. And I probably could have done those 2 steps at the same time. I could edit the commit, but I'm not. But then these 3 I definitely want to do at the same time. Just stage the rest of these changes is make initial card viewer control panel layout. Nice brief, describes what I did, move on. Because when I install this, so going back, I was going to install this React Bootstrap thing. I'm going to run this command that they gave me, the snippet. Hopefully it goes well. But what it should do is it should update my package.json if I ran this command correctly. I might have needed to add in another little flag, and if so, I'll go add this in manually. But I'm pretty sure if I did this right, there is now React Bootstrap. Yes, good. So in my package.json, they list the dependencies. I've now added React Bootstrap as a dependency, and I'll be able to commit that in a second once I've confirmed it works. They're going to require me to also add in a style sheet, I think. If you plan on, or you don't want to use a CDN for the style sheet, no, I do want to use it. They demonstrate how we import the buttons, but I am going to need to grab a style sheet file. Let's see. I think that I don't think I'm allowed to use this command. Let me just go see if I paste it into my app.tsx, if it freaks out without knowing the location of it. Oh, it might actually be available. The idea is, I believe it's going through in here looking for a Bootstrap folder that has this file, Bootstrap, dist, CSS, Bootstrap, yeah. So that's where it's able to get it from. Even though it's not in my SRC folder, my source folder, it's able to go through my node modules and find it. Is what I'm pretty sure I'm seeing right here. So let's actually go and test this. We'll go get a button to import, and they point out that there's 2 different ways to import it. I can either import the specific thing from the top level space, or I can pull in just the component. And they recommend using the former. I actually prefer the latter. It's more convenient when I want to add more things to this list. And yeah, I'm actually going to use this one just because I prefer it. We'll probably see pretty quickly why it's easy for me to just add more imports. They point out that that's going to have a lot of unnecessary imports when I do this, but what the heck, man? You only live once, right? the application doesn't have to be perfect. Let's actually put this not here. We'll put it in the control panel just to make that a little bit more exciting. So we import the button, and then inside here we have our button. And it's a React button, so I could probably actually style it some more. I don't know if they give a good quick example. No, they don't. Although I guess in theory that's all I technically need. Let me go back to our website. So now we have our button. Yeah, okay, cool. It's there, it's styled. That means we have Bootstrap working, and that's pretty good. If you go to our network tab, we can actually check to see if there's any 404 errors. But right now we're getting 200 on everything. And it would have also appeared here in the console. So now that we have our Bootstrap ready, we can start taking advantage of components and layout. And in critically, this means that we get access to a bunch of new tags that's going to let us have these containers organized into multiple rows, and each row is broken up into columns. So let me go and steal this, or well, no, let me just know what it looks like. It's container, row, column, and we go back to my code, and we're going to have at the app level change our div to be a container, and we need to import container from react-bootstrap. See if I got this at all right. Yes, okay, good, it likes it. And now we'll also need to have inside of control panel, we could potentially have, well here, we probably want this to be in one row. Yoink. Yoink, we may refactor this at some point. We'll see. Container, row. Refactor, by the way, if you've never heard this word, means to change it around, mix it up. In particular, usually without changing the actual behavior, just changing the way it looks in terms of the code. I guess refactoring my layout is another thing I'll say sometimes. I'll change the way it looks, but not the way it behaves, as it were. Now that I have these rows, I want to actually have also a column in here inside. Starting and ending tags, we'll need to import column. So this is why I wanted to use this other styles, because then I can just say col. Oh, it actually generated some unnecessary code there. Over here, we'll need call from React Bootstrap. And now I can wrap all this in call tags. There we go. Very cool. See if it works. Yes. Okay, cool. So now we have these two separate columns layouts. I'm a little unhappy with the margin on the top. I'm not sure if they have a quick thing that they recommend for laying that out. It might just be a matter of adding a margin to my entire app, and I might actually go in and do that. I'm kind of used to that idea of having a bit of margin. So this is a good chance actually. So I have a CSS class on my container called app. And if we go over to app.css, I can go and modify a whole bunch of different settings, different CSS rules for all of this. Let's make a new one. Margin top, I think, will be at the minimum, and just do, I don't know, 1 EM. EMs are a unit of distance. Yeah, they are an M space, I believe. So if I go back here now, there's a little bit of a gap from the top and the bottom. The top and everything else. We can see this a bit more easily. If I go into the Elements tab, you can see sort of how the layout of this body is. There's some lovely margin up top of this container. And there's already naturally some margin on the left and right sides that we get from using the layout. And we might want to end up changing the color of this, doing many other CSS type rules. But I think this sort of suffices for now in terms of making it just a little bit easier to see what we're working with. All right, let's keep going. I've added a few different things here. Bootstrap's working. We've confirmed it's working. Definitely a good time to update our changelog, our commits. We'll make mention that we've installed Bootstrap React and commit those first. Then I will update my I'll commit my changes which we can see we're about changing over to using containers. Use Bootstrap containers. And my only other change was here to add in a little bit of margin. We'll just stage that because why not? Add in margin. I might want to also go change the background color. We'll leave it for now. White is fine. It's a little boring. Okay, where are we at now? We've committed. I'm going to try and commit regularly. That's what good real programmers do, real software engineers. Commit often, making small, nice bite-sized chunks. We are going to need to start thinking a lot more about our data model. I could break down the components a bit more. It's definitely a thing I could do. I've got this prompt and this ref answer, right? Because let's think about this. I have my cards, right? These are all the cards. I don't want to show all my cards. There's sort of the sense of an active card in my application. And I'm going to need it so that the card viewer has the ability to render stuff about the active card. The control panel is going to need to know how to modify the currently active card, right? Like this is where we're going to have the buttons for the control panel. Let me actually even start breaking this up a little bit. We'll have a header, h1 tag, that says control panel, h1, and this will be a swap button, swap current card. So this should now be working. We go and view it. Yeah, control panel, swap current card, card viewer will show the current card. This will be a header over here. And we'll have the body be current card. So now we've got some better sense. Control panel on the left, card viewer on the right. Current card should be shown. We can't just dump all the cards, right? We saw that that wasn't what we wanted. We just want the single card. Now, I was expressing this headache of, well, I need this to show the data about the card and this to show the stuff that controls the card. Now, what is our application's state? That's sort of the question that we start with when we're designing things. State is a very important idea in any application. It's the current state of the data. You think about state as being something that transitions over time. We keep incrementing the state to be something new. So, if we were doing a simple counter, you click a button and it increases the counter by 1. The current value of the counter, that's the state. Or if you're playing poker, right? You're looking at a card game like Go Fish or poker. You've got your hand, you've got the cards that are currently on the table, you got the state of the deck. All these different components all have their own state. And you could take a snapshot in time of what that state looks like. Same deal here, where this application at any given time, like we can take a snapshot out of it. The cards are constant, like there's always a whole bunch of cards, but the active card, that one's special. And to that end, I'm going to capture that state into a variable using the React mechanism called useState. So we've talked a little bit about this in class. Just to give a quick refresher, I'm going to define 2 variables, card and setCard, which will be, and maybe I should be explicit, this will be active card and setActiveCard. And that's going to be created by react.useState using the type card, and the initial will be, we'll come back to that. Because we got to import some stuff. I want to quick fix add card to existing import declaration, and I need to import useState from React. I got card. Oh, haha! It took the wrong. So easy mistake to make. I got card here automatically imported from react-bootstrap because they have a thing called card, but that's not the card I want. I actually want the card that I created from my interfaces file. So //interfaces/card. So now I should have access to my card over here. I've got these 2 things, the variable and the setter for it. I need to give an initial value. The thing I'll probably use is I'll make the initial card just, for now, just be the first cards in the list. And if everything's gone well with my types, maybe it hasn't, it's going to freak out a little bit about my kind being a string required in type here. It wants it to be lowercase or uppercase. What did I name it over here? This is my mistake. It's very persnickety about the types, right? It inspected that JSON file and was like, wait a second. The cards you got from here, they are KIND, capital KIND. So I got to go fix this interface, and now it should hopefully recognize it. No, it's going to freak out and say like, these are card kinds instead of strings, and it's gonna want them to be card kinds. Now I can make it understand that this thing is in fact a card kind, and one of the mechanisms I can do this is, I think this will work. Yeah, I can do a type conversion. And the funny thing here is I'm not really converting any actual data. I'm simply telling React, hey, trust me. Look, I'm telling you that this expression is definitely going to reveal something that is a valid card. And this is like saying a very strong statement. Right? I am telling React, look, I know this isn't how it looks. I know in your mind that I have definitely not giving you something that is a card kind, but trust me, this thing, microaggressions, whatever the value in here, these will all be card kinds, because this will definitely fulfill the requirements. And this can lead to errors very easily, because if I'm wrong about this, if this is not actually valid data, then we're going to get errors down the road. But I'm pretty confident I made the data correct, so I should be able to. At this point, what have I done? What have I created? I have created some new state for my application, and it will be of type card. I've created essentially a new variable, active card, that will be of type card, and I'll be able to access anything that I would for a normal card. I'll also have the ability to update that variable using setActiveCard. So I will never, ever write something like ActiveCard equals, like, make a new card, or try and update. Well, I can update its fields, but I'll never try and update ActiveCard directly. Instead, I'll always use setActiveCard to set it to something new. And that'll be important. We'll see why that's going to be important down the road. But the important thing for now is we have these new variables. We're going to use them. We're going to give them to our control panel and our card viewer. For my card viewer, I'm going to give them a new parameter called card and pass in active card. For control panel, I'm going to give them setActiveCard, or setCard, and then pass in setActiveCard. Now, I have said that these functional components are going to take in these new parameters. I need to make that true, because currently they don't. They take in nothing. And the syntax for this, props, setCard will need to be a function that consumes a card and produces void. This will take in a card, C, void. I have a little bit of options here in terms of what I call this parameter. I could call it props, and then I would actually be able to use props.setCard. Or I could be specific. I could destructure this assignment and do setCard just on its own. So I put the curly braces around it to destructure it. Now I don't have to do props.setCard. I can just do setCard. It's freaking out because I don't have the import. Add import card from interfaces card. Had to be very careful there not to import card from React Bootstrap. Potentially going to be a headache there, but we'll see what happens. I could render setCard. That's not really what I want, but we'll let it happen for now. We'll come back to what it should actually be doing in a second. Card viewer, it needs its own parameter. We'll call it card, and card is a thing of type card. It's gonna freak out in a second saying, hey, what is card? And the answer is you get it from the interfaces of card. And we'll put the current card over here, just echo out the plain object. We know that doesn't do anything very interesting. And in fact, we have an error because we cannot render any of that stuff out. So let's go back over here. I didn't want to render setCard. That was just for demonstrating the access. Let's see if that clears this up. Can't really read the errors. Okay, we gotta actually read an error. Objects are not valid as React child. Oh, because I made the same mistake here. Let's echo out the card.prompt. I don't know that I like this is capitalized. This is bad practice. I probably want to make these attributes lowercase. We're going to go back and fix that in a hot minute. But first, let's just verify that we've got a card rendering, which, hey, we do. That actually feels pretty nice. It's the first one in the list that we got from the file. So we've already got some progress going on here. Now, we don't have the basic functionality I replicated in class. Let's just very quickly make sure that we're using setCard, because that's what this functional task I'm currently doing is, to try and make it so that I can swap out my cards, rendering them. I suppose I could right now actually just make a commit and say, like, basic card rendering. So let me go ahead and do that before I add in the ability to swap the cards out. Now I'm going to need a onClick handler, and I could write a whole bunch of code right here, right? I can write any amount of JavaScript card. OnClicks need to be a function. It needs to consume a function that will be the code that is run. So I could have it run like hello world whenever I click the button. So I go over here, swap current card, and you see it's printing out hello world. Did it 19 times there. I don't want it to hello world. I want it to set card. Well, what do I want it to set card to? If I go back over here, I can get my big list of cards. Okay, that part not too bad. I have access to my cards. Which one do I want? I have a whole bunch. I can't just pass in the whole list. That's crazy. I could pick the first one. That's certainly a thing that I could do. Oh, once the assets folders now. So you got to keep track of your paths, right? And this is a mistake I make all the time. I'm in components. I need to go up one level to assets, and then I can get to cards. Right? Sorry, up one level to source, and then source has assets. So I go up one level to assets, which is different than what I had over here, where I could just go to the same folder. Slightly different situation. Over here, I need to tell it once again, like, hey, don't worry, this is a card. It's definitely a card. You can trust me on this one. If it's not, then it'll end up having some kind of error at runtime. Let's see. Is it going to freak out a lot about this? Nope, there it goes. Sometimes it just takes a second to update. And if I reload, it's perfectly happy. I click swap current card. Yes, it's now setting it to the second one. So we have it updating. Now, I don't want it to update to the second one. I really wanted it to update to a random one. Now, JavaScript has built-in functions for random. Math.random is a very convenient one. Creates a float between 0 and 1. And if I want to convert that to a integer, because I don't think there's JavaScript random integer. They want me to use math.random. And what I really want actually is to get a random index from that list, a random element from that list. So I might just straight up search random JavaScript random element from array. See if there's any better suggestions of what I was going to do. Nope, this is exactly what I was afraid they're going to ask. I'm just going to subscript using a random number multiplied by the possible length and take the floor of that. So it is worth pointing out that this has certain inadequacies, but I don't really care about that. There are a lot of different ways I could be doing this, and this one should work just fine for my purposes. We might even make a helper function here. Function get random element. Given a list of values we'll say just a, can I just say array? Yes, I think I actually can. And we'll actually call it items to match up with the snippet I stole from the internet. We'll come back to that. Return element from items chosen at random. It may not like this. Yeah, okay. Ooh, oh, this is going to be fun. We're going to make a generic function. So why, I don't want to just write array here, because then what do I put for the return value is sort of a good question that might pop out to you. It's going to be whatever it's an array of. So I could just hard code like, oh, say that this is a number array and it returns a number. But that's not really a very good idea since we don't want this to generically to only work on numbers. We want it to work on any kind of type. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to introduce a new type variable. It's called T. I could actually name it anything I want. I could call it my type, some type, any type, some kind of type. But the convention is often just T. And I've introduced this type variable here with the idea that I can then use it in order to say this very sophisticated expression. Items is going to be an array. It's going to be an array of T. Whatever T is, could be integers, it could be numbers, could be strings, could be cards. It's going to be cards, by the way, spoiler. Whatever it is, I'm going to ultimately return exactly one of them. So it's a type variable, like it's a variable. I'm allowed to use it in subsequent expressions. And outside of getRandomElement, T doesn't exist, right? It's like if you had a local variable x equals 0. I can use x on subsequent lines. I could console.log it, and that makes perfect sense. But if I call getRandomElements, I don't have access to T or x afterwards, right? Like it doesn't have a .x, that's not a thing. Even if I gave it a bunch of numbers, it doesn't have access to that the way that it would have access to the return value. Type variables, really cool idea. Generic types is what we're looking at here. Now, whenever I use getRandomElement, TypeScript knows that the thing it's going to end up returning in this specific case is a number. And you see it even like fills in, when I hover over it, it says like, oh, it's a number. And it's smart, right? Like if I say Apple, alpha, beta, it's like, oh, now getRandomElement returns a string. And it knows I can't add 3 to it, but I can add another string. Oh, apparently I can't. It says, yeah, but you're not doing anything with it either way. If I console.log this random little expression, it will be happy, and it will know I can't add. Oh no, does it actually know how to convert it? But it would know that I can't add a card. Is that really worth going into? I mean, God knows JavaScript's happy to just add whatever it wants. Madness, utter madness. At least it knows what type of value it is, and that will become handy once we have to call stuff. Yeah, so like I can use toString, toUpperCase, trim, all the good JavaScript string handling functions that I might want. It knows what's being returned randomly from it. I have essentially a utility here. This is not something that's dependent. It's not really unique to control panel. I might want to use it in multiple places. Maybe a good time to make a new folder, utilities. And I often end up with a utilities folder. They tell you never have a utilities folder. I always end up with one. And we'll call this data utilities. Or data inside of utilities. We'll export the function so we can use it in multiple places. And now over in control panel, we'll be able to import and use it. I feel like I've written a lot of code. Maybe I should commit this utilities file. Oh, before I forget, I nearly did the bad thing. Let me go back to where I got this from. And I straight up stole that code, right? Like I did not, I mean, I had it in my head, to be honest. I've written it 100 times in other languages. But this time I distinctly stole it. And it's always a good idea to attribute what you're doing. I am not a stickler for a particular style of this kind of thing, but I do believe it's a good idea. So let me go in here and say where I got it from. In general, I might also like make more documentation. So like, grab a random element from a list. Notice this style here. This is JavaScript doc extension, JS doc extension, JS doc. 2 asterisks after a backslash, and VS Code helpfully fills in a lot of the blanks. Any kind of list, one randomly chosen element. So now when I hover over getRandomElement, I'll get even more information. I could be providing a lot more documentation for this. That would be good practice. When you're working on a team project, you really want to have some amount of documentation to explain what you're doing, why it's there. It doesn't have to be extensive. But the more context you give, the fewer questions other people are gonna have. It's worth keeping in the back of your head. I'm going to import my new getRandomElement. Autocomplete there helps a lot. And getRandomElement from my cards as card. And I think it will be, oh, nope, I want it to be just the one. Let's see if it's happy with the types. Always beneficial to get its perspective. Yeah, it seems to like that just fine. So now, if I did everything correctly, I have to reload. Nope, I did definitely do something wrong. Let's see, argument it may demand that I actually check this as a list of cards. Let's find out. Yeah, okay. So you see what I did there was, instead of saying the result of getRandomElement is a card, I actually wanted to say the thing I'm passing into getRandomElement is a list of cards. Otherwise, it didn't necessarily know what to do with this value. It knew that it was getting a list of things that were kind of like cards, but not really cards. So this is the much better idea, is the thing coming into the function, I want to typecast it as early as possible. Typecast, that's the word I was looking for, typecast. That, not convert, cast. When I tell the system to believe it is this type instead of a different type, that is casting. And it's you use the as operator in TypeScript. Thank you for bearing with me on that one. A little bit of an adventure of memory. Anyway, I now have the ability to swap out my cards. So that feels pretty good, is I just keep clicking swap current card, and it gives me a new one. So I go back over here, stage my data utility, get random element utility created, stage that, commit that, and now I'll also commit swappable cards, and I'm very excited about that. So we'll make capital, exclamation. So I embedded this expression in there directly. I'm actually tempted. I'm kind of a person who does this function. I'm going to make a inner function, a nice little temporary one, called setRandomCard. And it's going to consume nothing and produce nothing. I'm going to take this body that I had, slap it up there, and then instead of having to pass a lambda expression into onClick, I should be able to just pass in setRandomCard, I think, if I'm doing this right. Yep, that works just fine. So now it is, despite what TypeScript believes, it is using setRandomCard over here whenever I onClick. That is the event that gets triggered. Yeah, there it goes. Now it knows I'm using setRandomCard over here. It can take a full second sometimes for it to figure itself out. And because we've hooked up this data model correctly, we have active card as top level state for our component. If I go into my components, you can actually see that. We have the state, and that state contains the current card. And we can see that it's passed in as props to our card viewer, as opposed to having it be hooks, aka state. So they have access to their parent. Card viewer knows that whenever it gets a new value for card, it should re-render itself. Control panel knows that if we ever gave it a new value for set card, it would render itself. We're never going to be able to give a new value for set card. It is what it is. It is this function that doesn't change. Card viewer, on the other hand, it is the value for card, and it does change whenever we call set card. So control panel is probably going to be pretty static as is, versus the card viewer is the thing that swaps around. All right, we're making good progress. I want to keep going. I want to make sure that we cover a lot more ground in this video than what I've currently got. We have the card ability to change the prompt. Now we also need to have the reference answer. And that's actually going to be something that you display or hide. Let me say current card instead is prompt, followed by div suggested answer card.answer. I did say I was going to change those fields. I don't like that it's capitalized. That is actually bothering me a lot. Now that we have the suggested answer in there, I'm actually going to go also fix that at the same time. So we're going to go back to our CSV file, scroll up to the top. We'll have ID, kind, prompt, answer. Copy, paste, convert, steal, return to our data, cards.json, update the field. We'll need to also update our interface to all be lowercase. Have not changed anything substantial besides the fact that now, over here, instead of capital prompt, we'll have lowercase. Yoink and yoink. Okay, hopefully we'll figure itself out in a hot second. There we go. And we confirm that the website's still working. Oh no, we broke it. That's unfortunate. Okay, it just needed to be reloaded. That's good. Make sure, yep, seems to be just fine. We'll need to make these two things more visually distinct. We'll come back to that in a second. For now, I want to commit that change. Update attribute capitalization for card. So we'll stage all the changes, make the commit. Nice, tiny little commits. I want to take advantage of React Bootstrap. I know they have a component that might be handy here. We'll make it, it could actually be a card. I think it's really just more a matter of a well background with a border. So components, what do they call it in this version? Figures? No. Forms, image group, image, list group, modal, navbar, off canvas. I don't even know what that is. Hidden sidebars in your project for navigation, shopping carts. What does this do? Never seen this before. That's exciting. The world keeps on changing. Toasts are little cute things that pop up. Alerts kind of are what I want. I do kind of want it to be sort of looking like an alert, but they're really meant for contextual feedback. Kind of gives a wrong idea. Usually this would be utility. So I don't know what in this version it's supposed to look like. It's Bootstrap 5.1. Background color of cards might be sufficient. Yes, can I have multiple card bodies? Might be good. Should I have prepared this more? Who knows? At some level, it just is what it is. Let's go with the card thing. I wonder if I could just guess. Because I know it's going to be the BG attribute in the end. I wonder if I can just get away with doing that for this. Don't want to hesitate too much. It's surprising how much you can struggle trying to make design decisions like this, and it's really not my strong point. Overlays is definitely not really what I want. Good to know that that works, though. Man, the new version has so many cool little things. Yeah, I guess I'm going with this. So format of it, card, and then we can have card body, card title, card text. So let's bring back our code. Now we're going to actually have to be a little bit tricky here. Card, because we've got a thing called card already as Bootstrap card. I think this will work. So it's letting me alias the import, right? Because we've got my card and we've got Bootstrap's card. I'm going to alias their version of card as Bootstrap card. And then the thing in my code base that I'm going to be using will be that instead. So let's see, we'll have our Bootstrap card. Bootstrap card. Hey, Bootstrap card. Now over here, I will want to have it card body. So it's actually going to be Bootstrap card body because I've aliased it. Oink, oink. And slash. We'll need card title. Bootstrap card title. Oink, oink. We'll call this card viewer. Only we'll spell it correctly. Now we want card bootstrap card.text. Bootstrap card.text. And in here we'll have some text that says prompt. And we'll do this again. We don't actually need the div, I don't think. I think if we do this a second time, answer, and get rid of the old stuff. Let's see how this looks. And I'm not going to fuss too much about appearances. As long as it doesn't look truly terrible, I'm going to try and just go with it. Yeah, it's not too bad. I wanted to have them be two separate boxes. And I forget if I'm allowed to have multiple bodies in there. Let's just real quick, in and out, 20-minute adventure. We'll have another body and see if it works. That apparently does not do what I want it to do, right? I saved, it's reloaded. Yeah, okay. That's fine. We'll go with this for now. I at least am glad that it's spacing it out a little bit more. And this will look a bit better when we're not so zoomed in, right? So we'll play around with it. I probably want to make the word prompt bold. Yeah, let me actually even do that. Strong here, strong there, strong, strong. So now it kind of separates out the prompt and answer part. So we're getting our card viewer going. We've got this card thing. Let me actually go in and commit style the prompt answer section. hard to keep that discipline going. So we want to be able to click to reveal the answer. We want to have a conditionally rendered component, which is going to be kind of cool, or at least conditionally rendered JSX. So going back here, this is a new bit of state, right? It's distinct from the idea of the active card. We also want to have the idea of the revealed, answer revealed. So answer revealed, set answer revealed is useState boolean, and initially the answer is not revealed. So now we're going to need to pass this into our control panel. We'll just call this reveal, and that's set answer revealed. And over here, we'll also have it be revealed, or answer revealed, be answer revealed. There's a bit of an art here of deciding how to name things, and I'm being a little bit inconsistent with my reveal versus set answer revealed. I'm turning it into a verb form. Maybe that should actually suggest I should change this variable. There's a certain nicety to that pattern of variable, set variable, but I could name it something a bit more descriptive by naming it reveal. That keeps it shorter. We'll see if I end up hating this, but this is where my brain jumps to first. So I have my answer revealed, and I have my reveal function. I got to go update card viewer so that it actually consumes revealed, or answer revealed. And answer revealed is a boolean. Answer revealed is a boolean. We're gonna have to worry about TypeScript or the linting soon. So, because it's starting to get very long on that line, and there are things we can do about that. If I had a good linter set up, this wouldn't be too much of a problem. I might actually just go steal one from my wife at some point. We'll talk about linting in class, I'm sure. I need to also go update my set card. So this is going to take in reveal, where reveal is a function that consumes a boolean and produces void, produces nothing. Kind of like me. Okay, we now have the ability to use those things. So let's actually take advantage of them. Over in card viewer, we will say that we only reveal this text, answer revealed. Wow, that is not how you spell revealed. When answer revealed is true. And notice the very curious way I write this. Right? This is probably something that most people are not experienced with. I have put answer revealed ampersand, aka and then a JSX expression. Think about how ampersand works. There are these two operators that we've probably taken for granted, 5 or 3, the OR operator. They work with truthiness, so we're allowed to use regular expressions, regular values in them. If I say true or false, we're used to that. It's true, false, or true, and true and true, false and true, true. We're used to that. We also have these ideas of truthiness. So hello and empty string is empty string. If we had done false, it would have returned false. If we had done 0, it would have returned 0. Ampersand is an operator. It goes through each value, right? You can chain these together. Banana, ampersand, 7, ampersand, 0. It goes through and produces the first one that evaluates to false, a falsy value, or the first one that evaluates or returns the last value. So the funny thing here, and or let me just say or is a similar idea of, it returns the first one that is true. So if I do a bunch of falsy values and then a true value, it returns 7, right? Because as soon as it hits that true value, it's like happy to return it. Same thing over here. If I had false, it would skip over it, and then it returns true because that's the last element of the list. Ampersand, aka and, produces the last value, the first value that is false or the last value, or returns the first value that is true or the last value. Why is this useful? Well, I'm able to conditionally render using it. It's saying if this is true, then we'll skip over it and we'll go to this one. Otherwise, if it's false, then we don't need to render it, right? That's just the way that JSX handles itself, if I'm assuming I'm not forgetting anything. So now, if we go back, we'll see that we no longer see our answer. It's no longer being rendered based on that logic until we make our reveal button. So let's make another button. onClick equals reveal. Run a function reveal that toggles the current state of the reveal. Oh no, I need answer revealed right here. I did not think about that. So I am going to need to pass that in. Reveal answer. So right now it's trying to use answer revealed. That's not defined. Can't just use it magically. We have to intentionally make it available. So here I'm going to include it as a parameter, and we'll have answer revealed is a Boolean parent to everything else. Answer revealed now needs to be used when I instantiate it. So we can conveniently just copy and paste this, start breaking this onto multiple lines. Yoink, yoink, yoink. We go back to control panel because I made something wrong in here. There it goes. Excellent. Just took a second to proc. And now, assuming I get everything right, I go back here, reveal answer toggles the state of it, right? Because it's saying set the current state of it to be the inverse of whatever the answer revealed state is. So each time I click it, it's going to set it to be the opposite value, re-renders, and every time I click it again, it sets it to its opposite value again. So right here, I've gotten a very simplistic, hide show kind of thing. And I can swap the prompts. Now, I think I also want swap current card to not only swap the current card, but to also reset the reveal status. So reveal false. Whenever you swap the current card, hide the current prompt. So you see I can reveal it, and then I swap the current card and it hides it again. Pretty snazzy over there. I've currently got the buttons just next to each other. I probably want to break them onto their own line. Give a bit of space there. So many ways I could approach this. I think for now I just want to give them some margin. So if I remember the mechanism here, an easy way to do that is just class name M4. So Bootstrap, if it hasn't changed significantly, good, it still works. Bootstrap has a whole bunch of built-in classes I can attach to my my data, my elements. And this one I just used is called M4. It is standing for margin 4. There's also M3, slightly less margin, and all the way down to like M1. You can actually even go say like only do it on the bottom. So like M4 on the bottom. So you saw there, now it's margin. If I hover over it, it has 4 margin on the bottom and 1 margin and 0 margin on the top. I could do MT4 if I wanted to, only get it on the top side. So that's pretty useful. Let me reload the page so it's back to how it was. It's now M4 on both sides. It gives a little bit more space, makes it look a little bit nicer as I'm staring at it. We've got our swap card, reveal answer. Where are we on our to-do list? Okay, we have our reveal, we have our spin. These are going well. We need to have our user list. So this is where I thought I'd cheat. And this is intentional cheating, the same kind of cheating I want everyone else to do. If we go to npm website, npm is the node package manager. They have a bunch of built-in packages. Editable list. So I want to search their packages for a React-friendly editable list with the idea that I shouldn't make this from scratch. I should use something that someone's already created. And if you click around in here, then hopefully we can find something that's a little bit effective for this. They say I have a storybook for this component, so I can go check out what it looks like. There's also this folks showing a picture. Oh, I kind of like that. I hope you can't hear. My cat is actually desperately trying to get into the door as we speak. But right here we have this list of things. It's editable. Over here we have another list. Press enter to add. So we'd be able to add like Dr. Bart, Dr. Decker, Tara, Bob, Jim, Tina. And it shows that we've got the ability to drag and drop, so that's pretty nice. Yeah, I'm thinking this is actually going to be our winner here. This seems like a really nice component. So I'm just going to go ahead and steal this. We're going to try installing it, see how it works, if it fits in with our data model. Because we love stealing stuff, right? We find that to be a very effective thing. Over here in the top right, they show me where I get it from. So I go back over. Oh, let me commit before I do all this. So now we have it, the ability show, hide, answer. Got to remember to commit often. So difficult. And then I'm going to install my package. npm I is the same thing as npm install. It's just slightly shorter. npm I editable DND list. While it's installing, we hope it goes well. We'll see if it does. We're going to go back to this website and steal their example code. So we get a new import. Still chugging along down there. This will end up going, it'll probably be a new component. It could go into control panel. Yeah, let's make it a component inside of control panel. We'll call this the user panel. Users, yeah, just, how about the user list? Yeah, user list sounds good to me. And it'll need to be a functional component, export function user list, returns a JSX element. It will need our import. We'll need to return users just as a return value at all. Oh, not a string, sorry. Div users. User list is in there, and we will use it at the top. We'll have to import like you do. There he goes. It was not appearing for a second. And in theory, that should work just fine. Probably won't do anything interesting yet because we haven't actually set it up. Cannot find name user list in here. Even though I definitely told it that it exists. There it goes. It just takes a second. All right. Now we actually want to use editable DND list. So over here, we take the text that they have for the editable DND list, put it into our user list. They'll demand a list of items and a onChange handler. So let's go and define the handle change function to be something that takes in a bunch of items, which is apparently of type task question mark. What the task, based on the documentation, it looks to be a thing that has an ID and a text field. I'm not sure if they provide any further explanation of that. Doesn't look like it. Let's just see where that comes from. They recommend importing it from editable DND list, which they don't actually mention that, but whatever. They're apparently being lazy. So this is supposed to consume a list of tasks and returns nothing. So it returns void. And what it does with it for now is just going to be console log of the items. We'll come back to that. Okay, now we no longer have this dot handle change. So good time to mention it. This is demonstrating the old style React class-based components. And we're using hooks. So we have functional components. We no longer have to worry about all this mess of React extend, class app extends React component. And we get to focus a lot more on just using the good bits. So I didn't need this. I still have items. The items are no longer going to be items, they're going to be users. So we have to introduce this state into our application somewhere. For now, I don't need it in app necessarily. I might need to eventually lift it up to app, but right now, no one else in the application needs to use the users. So let me just make const users set users equals useState. What the heck is a user? We'll call it task for now. It's a lie, but we'll come back to that. And it'll be an empty list. We'll need to import useState, and we have our users. We probably want at least one test user in here. So right now we're using this task thing. We'll see how flexible that is. They need to have an ID, 0, and a text, Dr. Bart. Let's see if it's happy with all that. It wants ID to be a text. Okay, that's no problem. My ID will be 1. Arbitrarily chosen. Just everything in there arbitrarily chosen. Let's just see. We're just trying to get it to function for now. Okay, yeah, that actually functioned. It has us with a list of users. And we now have the ability to keep track of users. And if I make changes in here, so if I add another person, say Ada Bart, and add them, we now can get that list. And we can nicely drag it around, so change the order. And we will add in a shuffle button. Yeah, that might actually be a fun thing to add in, is shuffle the order. So we're going to add in a new control panel button. And at this point, we're going to start having users be controlled by the control panel in 2 different places. Because if I want to add in another button called shuffle users, and I want to eventually do something with my set users, we're going to need to have users be at a slightly higher level. Now let's hold off on doing that for a second. Let me just commit created editable users list. Good. Stage my changes. Commit my changes. Now we'll go back and we're gonna lift up the state. Right. We had this state for our users. We're actually gonna move it up to control panel. It's probably gonna end up in app eventually, but there's no reason to hurry that along. Right. There's no reason to make it global until we need to. From my perspective, for now we'll pass it down. And eventually we'll talk about other clever ways of passing state through your program. When you get to larger programs and it starts getting more complicated, there's a lot of clever ideas for what you can do. For here, though, we're going to have users, and users will just be a list of... We're actually going to use set users, too. Set users, what am I saying here? We need users is a list of tasks. And set users is a list of tasks, and set users is a function that consumes a bunch of tasks and returns void. Okay, now I have my users. We're going to need to actually set users items. Let me call this new users. Whenever we get new users, we got to update that. Hopefully that doesn't cause a recursive loop. Okay, over here, we need to import useState. We need to import task. It's going to need that. A second. Come on. Import task. We're going to need to pass in to our user list. Users equals users, and set users equals set users. We'll need the ability to shuffle. So I'm going to create a shuffle users function. Shuffle users. Oh, nope, sorry, I'm editing the wrong thing. I'm going to create a new copy of that line and then change it around so that we've got a shuffle users function. Shuffle users. Now, how does the shuffle users function work? Well, seems like another good time for me to go and get a snippet of code to randomly shuffle a list. And that's going to produce a very interesting problem, which I'm really glad we're going to encounter. But let's, for now, get the shuffle function, shuffle JavaScript. How to randomize shuffle a JavaScript array. You can see I've had to use this before. They recommend just taking this code, stealing it, and that will produce a new array. Let's see, does this modify it in place? Yes, that's perfectly fine. We'll come back to what that will need to do. So now over in my utilities, my poorly named data.tsx, we're going to make our shuffle that we got from the internet. We're going to definitely immediately also get the copy link to it. Document shuffles an array in place. What do I mean by in place? If you have an operation that produces a new copy of the data, that is not in place. But if it's just modifying the array you give it, then it is in place. So for instance, good simple example is if I have let x equals 1, 2, 3, and I do x.push 7, then x is modified in place, as opposed to creating a new version, 493. So x, when I do x.concat, aka concatenate, that appends all those elements to it, but it doesn't modify x. So it does not change. It's still 1, 2, 3, 7. It just created a new list based off the old one. My shuffle is going to be a in-place shuffle. It's going to modify the contents of the array. Now this is a shuffle, and it's going to actually do similar to what we did with getRandomElement. Let me therefore make a type variable and have it return the list of that type. Now this is what it's currently doing, is shuffle the array in place. And we're going to see why that's going to be an amusingly interesting problem for us, I'm pretty sure. Any array of elements, give the type, the shuffled array modified in place. Same array shuffled. So I'm making a big deal to anyone who wants to use it. This is an in-place shuffle, because that will be important. And in the meantime, I can now shuffle my users. And I'll use setUsers to nominally update this. I better get some more test users in here. We'll create 2 to be Ada. And we'll go with some of my other favorite people, aka Babbage and Ellie, and Mr. Pumpkin should go in here too. Even though he is being a brat and just clobbering my door, trying desperately to get in to see why I'm making so much noise without him. Cool, so I have my list. Let's just make sure this works. We'll add another person. So right now, we seem to have everything. Let's see what happens when we shuffle. Seems like nothing is happening. Let's see if the data got updated even when I did this. In theory, we should have control panel should have these users, right? We have this state, and that state has six people in it. Okay, cool. That's great that we've got all these unique people and everything. But why is it not updating when we click shuffle users? Well, first we can confirm that we are shuffling the list, right? Maybe I'm doing that wrong. If I go call shuffle users, and we'll call it shuffled users. We never like the variable name x. That's a terrible variable name. We'll say this is a user list. Oh, no, sorry. We're calling them tasks for whatever reason. And I think I'm actually at the point now. I hate writing the word task here. We're going to do a little trick. There's probably a way to rename this. Well, I guess I could just do user. Yeah, I could just do that. Another option that we might have is, and this is a little bit sneaky, is to do a typedef, as they call them. Typedef for, is it typedef? It's not actually called typedef in this language, right? User equals task. I think I can just say user type, export type user equals task. And now, once it figures itself out, it should, what have I done wrong? It takes forever for it to load, so I can't even tell if it's currently happy or not. I think it's this graphical glitch. But I'm more attracted to my other solution of, I should really just say as user. Because now I can be using user everywhere instead of task, which quite frankly is bothering me. Because these aren't tasks, they're people. Okay. It will know what I mean now, right? Good, yes, okay. So now I'm doing all this. I'm creating this variable shuffled users because I want to console.log it. I want to see if the users are changing. And I'm going to do, if I just did this, it would be showing me the list of objects. I'm going to actually map. So map is a function on a list of data. It will take in each element, a user, and we give it this function, and we'll say user.text. So it's going to apply that function to every element, thereby mapping it, thereby converting it. There it goes. Takes a full minute, doesn't it? So now when we go to console, if I click shuffle, yes, you see it is shuffling. So that's mysterious, right? Like this is a weird little bug we seem to be encountering where it's definitely changing the data, and yet when I call set users, it doesn't actually update the data. The reason has to do with what a reference is and how React detects whether something has changed. And this is so important. If you really got what they were talking about in 181, then the answer may have already been obvious, but it's probably not. And the idea comes down to reference equality versus identity. So here's sort of a question. If I do console.log users at this point versus shuffled users, you would expect the answer to be false, right? Most of the time it should be false. Because if you ask, if I go ahead and I shuffle the users and then I ask if it's equal to the old one, you'd be like, oh, well, it's different now. And yet it's consistently printing out true every single time, even though we see that the list is definitely changing in terms of its value. What on earth is happening? Well, let's ask a different question. Let's convert these to strings. And for full exposure, I'm going to also print out users so that we can see the before and after. So now, clear out everything that was in there, shuffle users. Now, why is it still true? Because, oh, why is it still true? I bet I know what this is. Hold on. I'm silly. I made a whole big deal of it earlier. Yes, it's producing object. It's not doing that. That's not how it's comparing them. It is, but it's not what I wanted. This is a bunch of strings in here, and I wanted to compare the strings to strings. Let me instead just jump to the proper way of doing it. That will demonstrate JSON.stringify users, JSON.stringify shuffled users, and we'll render out JSON.stringified versions. So this is not just converting it with plus, it's converting it properly to actual objects. And now I'm not going to map it, just going to have the data. Everything there should be good. So we go back over here, shuffle users, and now you should be able to see how it is changing itself. Am I going to look silly over here? Why is it rendering out the exact same thing? Is it not actually shuffling? It really looked like it was shuffling. Oh, wait. Oh. I'm demonstrating the exact thing that I wanted to not demonstrate. Okay. Why is it still consistently the same? If we put the console log for users beforehand, you'll see that it is a different string and it converts to something else. It is definitely shuffling. The problem is it's shuffling it in place. The contents have changed, but the array itself is still the exact same object. It's still the same point in memory. It's still that same list. The fact that it's now got slightly different contents does not matter to React. It says, oh, these two things are still the same thing in memory. And therefore, the thing that we want to really be comparing, and you can see this if I do shuffle, original users, if I make a copy of the raw data, the original value of the list, come on, just put it there, then it should finally say, oh, these are two different things. When I click shuffle, there we go, false, 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 false. I think I actually got unlucky and had a true right at the beginning just because of the way shuffling works. Had to happen once. So what am I building up to? What am I talking about here? What I'm trying to say is we don't want it to be in place. We want it to be producing a new list based off the old one. And the easy mechanism to do that is, it looks a little bit funny. It's to create a new list and unpack the elements of the old list. So this ... right here means unpack the elements from this list. And when I do this, I'm going to unpack it into a new list, thereby telling React, oh, by the way, the contents of this thing changed. So now when I shuffle the users, it's finally updating that list's actual data, and it triggers that editable list D&D thing to reload. This is gonna be a thing. This is gonna be a very common problem, is that you are going to be setting something to its same value without realizing it. With lists and objects, it happens so easily. Over here, I'm setting it to be a copy of the list by using the ... syntax. The same issue is almost certainly happening behind the scenes without me realizing it with my my cards, right? Like there's gonna be a good chance you often want to be setting cards to instead be unpacking that element. It works okay here because I'm not modifying the state, but you'll also often end up unpacking a object. And I'm sure we'll talk more about this at some point. I know this video is getting very long. We're already at almost 2 hours. And I have gotten the basic features in here that I wanted, right? I have, if I go back to my plan, I have my editable list, needs to be shuffleable. Oh, I guess I need an advance button to go to the next one. That's kind of what swap current card is supposed to do. But I guess I have everything I really need at a high level. Maybe we'd want to do something for tracking answers. We could do local storage. We still have, what, 24 minutes? Let's real quick. Should I do local storage? Yeah, let me add save and load buttons. This seems like a really good idea. Let me commit what I have. Added shuffling of users. And we'll do this. We'll see how complicated this is. I have not scoped this out. This could actually be much more difficult. But it seems like such an important idea is to have the ability to save the current game. And we'll make this one, we'll actually show off a little feature here, variant equals success. If I did this right, then I think there'll be a green button here. Save is not defined. Yeah, that's fair. I did not actually create the function called save that I want to have. Function save. It will console.log for now, game saved, which is a total lie, right? It does not actually save anything, but we have our green save button at least. Now, how am I going to save the game? What do I want to have as my mechanism? I'm going to use a thing called local storage. Local storage is pretty cool. It did not exist back when I was younger, but it does now, and that's great. If we go to application, you see there's a whole bunch of fields, including one called local storage. And if I go into console, I have access to a special global variable called local storage that I can use a method on called setItem. And we'll call this TA trainer as the key and set its value to be 5. And the cool thing about local storage is I can get item just like I set item. So if I give it back that key, it goes and gets me 5. And if I go to application, I can actually see that we've got this key in here. And if I reload the page, that local storage is still there. I still have access to it. Now, if I go to a new computer, it's not going to be there, right? This is my local storage. The same way this is localhost. This is the local storage for this computer. Every website can have local storage, as long as you don't disable a setting. And we can use this API to save and load our application. So the thing we're going to store is the user list. So we need to be able to have a way of absorbing the users, slurping them into a value that is stored in local storage. Now, local storage, funnily enough, only allows you to store strings. Is that true? I've never tried that. Oh, wow. Okay, it does something. TA trainer gets me back the string value 5. Okay, it converted it to a string when I did that. So I could give it something like an object, right? Name Bart. And I could do that. Oh, I wrote get item instead of set item. I could do that But when I get the item back, all I get is object. So we're going to go back to our good old friend JSON.stringify. Takes in an object, converts it. And now when I get item, it gives me back the string representation of it. So we'll combine this with another JSON function called parse that knows how to go from that string back to the actual data. So we're able to encode it as a string and then get it back as a string using these guys. And that's going to be very relevant. For now, we want it to just set item, local storage.setItem, TA trainer, that's our special key. That'll just be consistent. In fact, let me make it a constant. Export const local storage users, and we'll call it TA trainer users. I'm going to use that as my key because I'm going to need to use it in two places. I don't want to forget what it is. And we're going to do JSON.stringify our users. So whenever we click that save button, it'll take the current value of users and turn it into a lovely JSON blob and then set item in order to back it up. So if we go over to our application, at this point we should be able to click save, and look, TA trainers users now exists, and it's that lovely textual representation of our object, our list of objects, our list of users, as it were. We also need to have this load. So previously I just hard-coded some data. Let's take that, extract that to export const initial users, store that, and we'll even be helpful and say that this is a user list. Now, the thing we're going to put inside the use state is going to need to be either local storage, get item, local storage users. But think about what happens the first time someone comes to our application, right? The first time they come there, this is going to return a value. What value is it going to return? If we go to local storage and we look for a key that doesn't yet exist, get item, like banana, it returns a null. So we need to write some logic in here. We're going to say is this will be our users, existing users, const existing users is a list of users. It comes from local storage. If const is null, and I can write this in any number of ways, existing users, question mark, existing users, if it equals null, then use initial users. Otherwise, you can use existing users, the variable I created. The faster, easier way, though, remember I mentioned the OR operator earlier, lets us say, find the first value that evaluates to truthy. If existing users is null, if the thing coming back from local storage is null, then no, we can't. This isn't going to work, is it? Right. Okay. I'm glad that I read the error message there because I nearly made a mistake here. I'll explain all this. So existing users can either be string or null, right? TypeScript knows that local storage get item returns either string or null, and it wants me to account for that null. And in theory, that's what I was trying to do over here is say like, oh, if existing users is null, then use initial users instead. The problem is going to be JSON.parse because I don't want it to be a string value I'm passing in. I want it to be a users that I pass in. And right now, JSON.parse will turn it into it. And I can tell it like, oh, this is definitely a user array, but that might not be true, right? And I don't know what happens if you JSON.parse null. Oh, it produces null. I didn't know that. Okay, so let me go back here. We have it trying to parse this expression, which might be null. It might be null. I'm going to actually have to make this fairly complicated logic with an if statement, I think, would be most elegant. If existing users, let's see, this will be a string or null. If existing users equal null, then we're going to use let instead of const because I'm going to be able to change the value. Existing users should become equal to initial users. and we'll make a copy of it so we don't lose it. We don't change the original. Otherwise, we need to create a new variable, let existing users, actually, let's make this existing users. So many different pieces of this. We'll call this raw users. So now raw users equals none, then update existing users. Otherwise, make existing users be equal to JSON.parse existing users, or raw users. Let's see if this makes it all happy. We'll have existing users. Whew. Okay, we'll see if that ends up being the right answer. But the thing I ended up needing to do, local storage get item could return either string or null. And that gave me my raw users. I would need to end up with existing users, which will be a list of users. So I need to go from the string or a null into user. If raw users end up being null, we want to just go with the initial users we were handed. Otherwise, we want it to parse out raw users, that string, turn it into an actual list of users, and pass that in. Now, this was a lot of extra logic. I feel like it should be encapsulated in a function. So let's do export function get local storage users. And that will be a thing that returns a user list, consumes nothing. Yoink, yoink, yoink. And here, we don't actually even need existing users anymore. We'll just have it return directly the answer. Don't need the arrow. And now I can just use get local storage users. No fuss, no muss. Hopefully. I said no fuss, no muss. There we go. There we go. All right, let's see if this works. So now I should be able to go into my application and reload the page. And we'll try making some changes, move pumpkin earlier, click save. And now pumpkin is the second one. And we move LA to be at the top. So we'll put these in order like this. We save. And now Ellie, Ada, Babbage, Pumpkin, Bart. If we don't save, it should not update. So now it should go back to how it was, which it does. All right, so we have saving and loading at a very basic level. And it's all stored in local storage, which means we have our MVP. We have all the little features that we promised, except for the ability to add new prompts and references. But that's okay. That's okay. We don't necessarily need that. Should we add that? How long are we in the video? We still have another 13 minutes before it's a 2-hour video. Let's throw caution to the wind. Let's try and add in that add button. Let me save my work. Save button, save loading, saving and loading. Just because it's good to see all these different features. So now we're going to go in. I notice we have some issues, actually, some warnings. Let's make sure that we're clearing all those out. So we have a leftover useState over in user list that we don't need. It's a good idea. And utilities also has a, yeah, this should be a 0 while there remain elements to shuffle. That's much cleaner. We got that snippet from the internet, but I think we can trust that change. And clean up code base of dead imports and lazy code. Yoink, yoink, yoink. Now, technically, I'm writing an awful lot of code without writing tests, but I have a purpose for that. I have a reason for why we haven't tested things yet. It's not because I'm a bad coder, despite what people might believe. It's because I'm going to make you guys write the test before we're all said and done. But before we do all that, I want to add a button that lets me create a new card prompt to add into the pool. So I'm going to need to have my data model be a little more sophisticated. Now, I can't just rely on the absolute list of cards. I'm going to need to have like this deck idea. So let me add in a new button. No, let me go add in a new data model, a new thing in my data model. So there's going to be a button in the control panel, and that's only going to be relevant, I think, for the control panel to add. Where does it? No, yeah, because the viewer doesn't depend on anything in the deck. That's good. Okay. Let's go ahead and have it be a fairly simple thing. Button over here. Add new card. We won't make it anything special in terms of the color. Add new card will be a function. Add new card. And it's going to modify a new thing called the deck. See if we can't get away with putting it at this level. The deck, set deck, will be a list of card. And initially, it's going to end up being the cards that we got from the file, which is currently happening at what, the top level? We initialized that. We imported over here. So let's go ahead and take that. Make sure it's over here, cards, yep. So it'll initially be the value of cards. And we're going to need to have a way of, oh, we got to specify that this is actually a card array. You can trust us on that one. If I hadn't done card kind, I probably wouldn't have that problem. Oh, I haven't even taken advantage of card kind. Ugh, now I just feel silly for having done it. Best time to plant a tree. I'm going to go back and actually change it back from card kind and comment this out for now. It's in version control, so commenting out is kind of lazy, but I want to just hold on to that, see what happens when and now if it's happy without me typecasting it. Is that true? I really am curious if I could have been making my life easier. Yeah, it's true. I didn't need to make it a card kind. There are advantages. I promise you that there was something cool I could have showed off if I'd kept going with that, but I don't think it ended up being necessary to my design. It has to do with the way you use select boxes and enumerations. But more importantly, I want to have the ability to add new cards in my deck, and I want it so that when I set a random card, it's going to get a random element, not from cards, but from my deck. And in particular, I'm going to want it to also let me add new cards. So when I call add new card, I call set deck. And I want it to take all of the existing cards that we have in the deck, plus one new one. So I'm making a new list based off the old one, and I'm going to have a new card. Now, that new card has to come from somewhere. How are we going to let the user make a new card? Well, very, very basic idea would be to have the user generate it via confirm boxes. Now, what's in a card, right? We know that a card needs an ID, so we'll need to have something for that. We could just have it generate a random number for the ID. That's very lazy, but effective. We'll need kind, so we'll call it custom kind, a new version of this. Math is capitalized. What about the prompt? Well, there is a useful thing called window.prompt. It's actually kind of funny that it's the same name. This is a coincidence. What do you want the prompt to be? And the answer is the other field. We'll use window.prompt again. What should the answer be? And am I doing math.random wrong? Let's see if it likes everything. So now I'm saying this is going to be a card, and set deck is this. Now it knows that window.prompt can be null. So now I can finally do my little nifty trick. If it's null, I can give it a default value using the or, because if this side ends up being an expression that evaluates to null, if it gets nothing back from the user because the user clicks cancel, then I'll use this one, no prompt. And for this one, I can do the same thing, no answer. So very bare bones kind of situation. Eventually it should figure itself out. Let's see if I got this working from memory. Add new card prompts me, what do you want the prompt to be? Hello. And what do you want the answer to be? World. So now whenever I do that, the deck should actually also contain, should technically be able to randomly generate that new value. So let me go up to, what will it be? Not control panel, or it will be control panel. They've got the state for the deck, And the deck now also contains my lovely new random card that I've added. Of course, this isn't persisting. We'd have to persist it to local storage. Now, I don't want it to be that hideous new prompt thing. I could leave it at that, but I've got 6 more minutes. I want to just quickly see if I can show off how I can use Bootstrap to make modals. And that would also require me to figure out where I put Bootstrap in my browser. React-bootstrap. Let's see what they have to say about their modal boxes. Dialog boxes. So they look very nice. Let's go make a new modal. Nope, not emoji. Don't want that. I want to copy. I'm going to steal all this good stuff. Go back to my code, make a new card modal. New card, add card modal. CSX. And we will have this be a JSX component, sorry, functional component. So export function add card modal will be something that we'll need to have parameters. I assure you of that, having made a few modals in my day. But for now, we'll have it return over here, JSX expression, like so. We'll need to import modal from React Bootstrap. And we'll also need buttons. Let's close, save changes. We're going to end up putting forms in here. Forms are going to be a very big part of your project. You're probably going to do a lot of forms. So I'm really glad I'm getting to show this off. We're going to need to have 2 variables. Show, no, actually we'll call it visible and set visible. They are going to be respectively, visible is a Boolean and set visible is a function that sets a Boolean. Void. Then going back to my add card modal, to actually use it, I am, wait, do I need visible in here? Oh, I don't think I actually need visible. Let's get rid of that for now. So we're only going to have set visible. So I haven't explained it yet, but I'm going to have this function set visible that's passed in. And over in app, I am going to have at the bottom my new add card modal. And it's going to need set visible, set visible. I'm clearly referencing something here, right? No, I am going to need set visible. Actually, we'll call it toggle. Yes? Question mark. Is that how I want it to be played out? Let's bring it back. Let's bring back the visible. This will be easier, I think, this way. We are going to create a new bit of useState. Kind of doing this backwards of how I might think about it. useState Boolean. Initially, it's not visible. Now we have our set visible. We need to import add card model. Yoink. And we're going to also need to pass in visible. The idea is that we are only going to render our add card model if it is visible. And I don't think there's a clever way to do this in here. You see the example that they give. They have this button that's onClick is going to make it visible. And we're also going to have several buttons in the interface that let me make it closed. Okay, no, there is a show property. Okay, good. This is what I was looking for. So over in add card model, the modal dialog should have a show attribute called visible, question mark. See if it likes that. What are you freaking out about? Show does not exist on this type because the example they gave me is very different. So modal dialog might not be what I want. Let's see if getting rid of that makes it happy. Because these are all, yeah, these don't have that modal dialog. Okay, good. So now it's happy. I need to get my onHide going. OnHide will be when we call, we set visible to be false. Close button, shouldn't need anything. I will need to do onClick handlers for close. OnClick equals a function that sets visible to true false. And if I keep writing this, I should probably capture it at some point. Right, so like, yeah, if I've written it 3 times, that's more than enough to justify making a new const expression. Const hide equals a function that sets visible to false. So now I can just pass hide into my onHide and my onClick, and we'll copy and paste that. So it won't do anything yet. We have close and save changes, but they aren't doing anything different between the two. We have up in our app level, we have the visible and set visible that we're passing in. We need a button that actually will make the card modal visible. So let's go add it to our control panel. Set visible, set show add card modal will be a function that passes in set visible. And we'll go back to control panel. We'll need to add in this new parameter. Really need to install Prettier so that I can make it automatically reformat for me, because now it's starting to actually get a bit complicated. Boolean void. Declared but its value is never read. That's perfectly reasonable. So now we'll have it so that add new card actually just triggers show add card to be true. And its code, we're going to come back to it. We're going to come back to how it works. But currently, it's just going to show that modal. Let's see. Did we miss something? Any must return a value. Did I mess up the formatting? Nope, it just took a second to proc. Let's see what we have. We have add new card. It makes this modal appear. Excellent, cool. Now we want the modal body to have some extra text. We need to have 2 fields, prompt and the answer. So const prompt and set prompt equals useState string and prompt text. Const answer set answer useState string answer text. And we'll also end up needing to have a save. So we'll come back to that. For now, I'll just do function save card, consumes nothing, and just console logs saving prompt answer. Okay, I wanted to actually, I have to import useState. Reload. Give it a second. It's figuring itself out. And are you happy now? Nope, I've done something very wrong with my useState. Over in add card modal, it's claiming that it doesn't have useState. Let's just real quick, no, do I want to try and hard refresh? Okay, there it goes. Now add card modal works still, everything's fine. We're gonna add in some forms. Apparently we're gonna sneeze first. I apologize deeply for that. Okay, we are going to add in some forms. So we go over to our forms and we'll go steal some lovely, lovely forms. We have several options. We're gonna probably take them to be text areas, I'm thinking. So we'll go and we'll need a form tag on the outside. Down here where our body is. We're basically going to take all this and slap it right in there. Import our missing form. And we want our first form to actually be a text area, both cases. So we'll call it prompt, suggested answer. We'll need a control ID for testing purposes. We'll call this add card modal. Or actually add card form. Sounds much better. And this will be prompt, text area, and answer, text area. Class name, we really should give names. Actually, maybe it's smart. We'll see what it does. So now let's just see what that looks like. If I click add new card, yeah, okay, cool, it is smart. So now we can add in text over here. It's not tied to anything though. So I will need to have it responding. There's a whole thing here about controlled versus uncontrolled data that I don't really want to have it to get into. I think it's just too much, but it's worth learning about. I'm going to show off uncontrolled behavior. On blur, we get some data. Is this how it works? Hold on. React text bootstrap text area on blur. In fact, actually, it's probably on this page somewhere. On blur? Nope. On change is how they recommend it over here. This is going to be easier, isn't it? All right, we're going to go with the lazy approach. On change, and that will be like this. So we'll have our value, which will just be prompt, and our handle change, which will hopefully just be set prompt? Question mark? Haven't had to do this from scratch in a little while. I have so many helper functions. Set prompt needs to be a completely different type. So I want it to be a function that consumes a string. Is that true? Let's find out. Text, string, text. Let's find out if that decides to work. I don't want to have to guess because it's 2:15 a.m. and I am just going to look up TypeScript on change text area. Form elements and on change. This seems like the right thing. Cheat sheet is just what I want. React TypeScript cheat sheet for text area is React change event. Oof. We'll take you and paste you there. And we want ev target value. Oh boy. What a lovely thing. And see if it likes that. Oh no, the random stranger on the internet lied to us. Am I right? It wants it to be change event form control element. I don't think it's updated. There it goes. He didn't lie to us. He was on point. So now, in theory, if we got everything right, then in our modal dialog for its state this, nope, we may need to reload. Let's find out. We go to add new card. We're checking out add modal. Our suggested answer has no state updating. Not really what I was looking for it to do. Oh, nope, I'm dumb. I'm editing suggested answer instead of my prompt. Yeah, okay, that works just fine. You see it's updating it correctly. No muss, no fuss. All right, let's do the same thing over here for our answer. And we want it to be set answer. We want to be using the answer value. So what am I doing? Why am I just copied some random stuff in there. While it's loading, I can actually tell you how this is working. The idea here is that these forms, like input boxes, text areas, drop downs, they all have events that they respond to just like anything else, including one called onChange. They also have a value field. And I'm saying, hey, for your value, I want you to use the current value of this variable answer. And onChange, get this event, right? A React change event for the HTML text area element. When you get that event, set the value of answer to be the value of the event's target, aka event target value. And this lets me populate the field whenever it changes its value. And what I want to have happen is, if I set the prompt to hello world, banana cream pudding, I want to be able to click save changes and for it to persist that change to the deck. So we're getting very close to that point, but we're not quite there. We need to have this save card function get called instead of hide. Save card can also hide, but it needs to distinctly be, and let me actually have it set visible directly to be false. Could have it hide instead. It's really half one, half a dozen the other. Really need to work on my linting. There we go. When I do this, currently it's just console.logging. I needed to modify deck. Now add card modal is under app, right? So it's parallel, it's a sibling to control panel, which means I need to lift the state of the deck from the control panel. So we got to go through that whole process that we love so much. Move it up here. Now we can pass in set deck and deck over to our add card modal. And actually, we're going to make a helper function to do that. So function add card will be a function that consumes nothing, or that consumes a card and doesn't produce anything. It will set deck based on the old deck with the new card. And we'll pass add card into add card modal. That way I don't have to pass in deck and new card, right? Like that function depend on both. And it's not really important necessarily for add card modal to know how to add cards to the deck. Arguably it could be, like I wouldn't blink twice if someone had it in there, but I'm attracted to the idea of not having to pass in both of those variables. I really only want it to tell it how to add new cards, what to do in terms of notification. So now we are going to need to pass in deck though, no question about that, to our control panel. It's an object, so order doesn't matter, which is good because I actually can't even keep track of the order anymore. C card, nope. This is just a bunch of cards. We have our deck. We got to go back to add card modal. It's going to be taking in now add card, which is a function that consumes a card and produces void. We need to save this file. Let's see where it's at with all this stuff. It's definitely unhappy about something. Duplicate parameter add card. Did I somehow duplicate my parameter add card? I don't think so. I may just tell it to hard refresh TypeScript reload project. Just to make sure. Okay, while it's doing that, add card does not exist on the type for add card modal. Something gone wrong in add card modal. Should have add card. Oh, here's why. This curly brace should be over here. Otherwise, it thought that add card was a additional property of this object that has visible, set visible, and now add card. Almost there. We've almost got this from interfaces card. Now we'll have access to my card class, And hopefully everything will be happy, because this is getting to be a very long video. Come on, I know you can find it. I know you can find it. It's in there. Just dig deep. You can definitely find interfaces card. And yet it claims it can't. Control-Shift-P, reload project. It's frustrating when that works, because that's just TypeScript being stupid about not realizing that, oh, it does actually have the data. Sometimes it's necessary. Control-Shift-P, and then typing the word TypeScript, you can get access to reload project. Sometimes it works, usually doesn't, sometimes it does. But let's find out if we are able to add new decks. So we have our existing deck. It has nothing in it. If I'm going to add a new deck, then its value will be new card and banana. Save changes. Alas, it does not work yet. Okay, do we get anything in the console? It's saving new card, banana. So here's a question is, did we call add card? No, we did not. Add card actually getting called over here, passing in a new card. So let's go steal our code that we had over in control panel. This will come in handy. Delete that old code over there. We make a new card. Add card. Yoink. Yoink. We no longer need window.prompt. We just need prompt and answer. Ooh, oh, here's a fun little thing we can do. Because the key and the variable share the same name, we don't actually need the colon there. We can just do prompt and answer. Very nice little convenient syntax they provide in modern JavaScript that I am a big fan of. Okay, now let's go see if I correctly hooked everything together. And if so, we should be able to add a new card over here and save changes. Hey, we got it. We got it. Now, granted, when I click save, it's not persisting that. That's an exercise for the reader for sure. But hopefully you're starting to see all these different components. Because I've done an awful lot now, right? I have a modal for adding a new card. I just noticed that it doesn't have the right text into it. So let me just, real quick. Oh, I can get rid of my console.log too. This is my add new card. Make a big commit. Able to add new cards with modal. Yoink. Stage all of them. And then commit all of them. Cool. Cool, 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 cool. So I can swap my current card. I can reveal the answer. I can shuffle my users. I can save. And I can add a new card with modal. This right here. This is a web application, right? This is pretty sophisticated. I got a lot of different things going on. I got state. I can save the state. I can load the state by reloading the page. Lot of different things going on. You saw I had to do a lot of work managing my state. That was a lot of it was just figuring out who needs to know about this, whose job is it. Making those kind of calls, very tricky, but very important. There is so much in this video that we covered, a lot of different pieces. Hopefully this is helpful, and that if you have any trouble with any part of this, please do ask questions. So thank you for paying attention through the whole thing. I know it was a lot. Hopefully it's worthwhile. Please let me know. I won't say like, share, and subscribe, but I was certainly tempted to. Either way, have a great night and good luck with this.